Welcome to Plain English, the podcast that goes at the right speed for English language learners. Listen now and read the transcript online at plainenglish.com. Now, here's Jeff, your host for today's episode.
Billy Graham, the preacher who personally reached more people than anyone else in the history of Christianity, has died. Welcome to Plain English for Thursday, March 1st, 2018. I'm Jeff, and you are listening to the podcast that goes at just the right speed for English language learners. On today's program, we'll talk about the American preacher Billy Graham, who died last month. Through his massive crusades and television and radio programs, he reached over 2 billion people, including about 200 million people in person. In the second half of the program, I'll show you how to use the phrasal verb carry out. Like always, you can find a transcript of this program online. If you have trouble understanding every word, you might like to read the transcript as you listen. Today is episode 25, so the webpage is plainenglish.com/25, plainenglish.com/25. The transcripts have instant translations of difficult words and phrases from English to Spanish, Portuguese, Chinese, and French. So if you speak any of those languages, you have an additional resource on the webpage, plainenglish.com/25. Let's get started on today's topic. Billy Graham, the most famous preacher in the United States, died last month at the age of 99. Over the decades, he preached personally to more than 200 million people in all parts of the world, counseled 12 presidents, and was the voice of Christianity and Protestantism in the United States. Protestants are the second largest group of Christians after Catholics. There are several denominations of Protestants, including Baptists, Anglicans, Lutherans, and Methodists, among others. One characteristic of Protestantism is that there is no central authority, like the Pope in Catholicism. And for that reason, there is no natural leading figure in Protestantism. It's much more decentralized than Catholicism is. But Billy Graham stepped into an unofficial role as America's, and probably the world's, leading Protestant. His personal mission was to spread the Christian gospel to as many people as possible, and he formed the non-profit Billy Graham Evangelistic Association to carry out his work. In addition to hosting events, the association produces television and radio programs, sponsors youth outreach programs, and aids in disaster relief. It also organizes training missions for Christian volunteers. Billy Graham developed a signature way of reaching people through his crusades, large, in-person spiritual events that sometimes stretched over several days. Though large numbers of people attended, Graham sought to make his crusades an intensely personal experience for the attendees, inviting them personally to the stage to affirm their religious faith in front of everyone. His first crusade attracted 6,000 people in Michigan. His final crusade in New York City in 2005 was sponsored by over 1,400 regional churches and was attended by over 200,000 people. One of his crusades in South Korea was attended by more than 1 million people in person. His biggest event in the United States was in Central Park, where over 250,000 people attended. He preached to more people in person than anyone else in the history of Christianity. If you include his radio and television audiences, he reached over 2.2 billion people. Billy Graham was a consistent figure on television. He would host a few television specials per year, but would also spread his message through countless TV interviews. He appeared with a single interviewer, Larry King, over 50 times. He is the only minister to have a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame for his religious work. As a public figure, he almost never took sides in political battles, but that doesn't mean he didn't have a high political profile. Instead of aligning with a political party or movement, he advocated for particular causes: against communism, for military disarmament, and in favor of alleviating poverty, disease, and environmental damage. He met with and counseled 12 presidents, every one from Harry Truman through Barack Obama. He had a close friendship with Lyndon Johnson, a Democrat, and Richard Nixon, a Republican. He also had a special relationship with Queen Elizabeth II of England, whom he met on a tour of Europe in the 1950s. He invited Martin Luther King Jr. to preach with him in 1957 and insisted on racial integration at all his events. An American company does an annual poll of the most admired people in the country. Billy Graham made the list 60 times, more than any other person. For that reason, he was well positioned to offer comfort to Americans in times of national crisis. He led a service at the Washington National Cathedral on September 14th, 2001, just a few days after the attacks on the World Trade Center. And he spoke at the memorial service for victims of another bombing in Oklahoma in 1995. Graham spent the last years of his life at his log cabin home in North Carolina. No official cause of death was disclosed, but his health had been failing for several years. Yesterday, February 28th, and today, March 1st, he lies in honor at the rotunda of the United States Capitol building in Washington, D.C. It is only the fourth time in American history that this honor has been extended to a private citizen. His funeral will be tomorrow, March 2nd, at the Billy Graham Library in North Carolina. Before we get to today's phrasal verb, I wanted to say hi to Anderson from Brazil, Ali from Algeria, Jose from Puerto Rico, and Maria, who describes herself as an Italian-Colombian student living in Bogota, Colombia. Thanks so much for listening and connecting on Facebook. I always love hearing from people, so don't be shy about sending me a note on Facebook or Twitter under the username Plain English Pod. You can also send me an email directly to jeff@plainenglish.com. One quick reminder, if you want to get a little more out of every episode, consider signing up to get the episode emails. Each email has links to English articles that I use to research each show, so you can do some additional reading if you like. And I also choose one more word or phrase to describe for you. Usually when I'm writing the episode, I have 2 or 3 phrases I want to talk about, so the ones that don't make it into the audio show are in the emails. If you want to sign up to get those, just go to plainenglish.com/mail, plainenglish.com/mail, M-A-I-L, and fill in your details. The word we're going to focus on today is carry out. Here's how you first heard it earlier in the program. Billy Graham formed the nonprofit Billy Graham Evangelistic Association to carry out his work. Carry out simply means to do a particular piece of work or to put it into operation. Billy Graham wanted to reach as many people as possible, so he needed an organization to help him fulfill his mission, to help him carry out his work. You want to use carry out when you've got a plan or a vision, but you need to make that plan or vision a reality. You can say you want to carry out a plan, carry out a vision, carry out a person's wishes or desires, or even carry out instructions. That one means to follow instructions. You might tell your kids you want your instructions carried out precisely. That means you want your kids to do exactly what you say. Here are a few other examples. The president of a company has a vision for a new product, and he has a plan to create it. Now, he just needs his top managers to carry out his plan. That means the president had the idea, but the managers need to make that idea a reality. They are the ones who need to carry out the company president's plans. You may have heard the news that Xi Jinping, the president of China, may be allowed to have more than 2 terms as China's leader. Some people were saying he needs more than 2 terms to carry out his ambitious plans. We'll talk more about that example on Monday. Here's one more. Billy Graham's wishes to be buried in North Carolina at his library will be carried out tomorrow, March 2nd. I think you get the idea now. Carry out is all about making a wish, a desire, or a plan into a reality. That's it for today's episode. Thanks for listening to Plain English. We'll have new episodes every Monday and Thursday. If you're listening on Spotify, click follow. If you're in Apple Podcasts or another podcast app, don't forget to click subscribe, and you'll get the new episodes in your podcast library as soon as they come out. Thanks again for listening, and we'll be back with another episode on Monday.